Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Patricia Carey from Ireland. Welcome to the show, Patricia.
Thanks very much, Simon, and great to be here today and to talk to your listeners. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. So today, listeners, we're going to do something a little bit different. So Patricia Carey is she's the CEO of the Adoption Authority in Ireland, and they've introduced a new service for adoptees and people involved in adoption. And this is such a big issue, this access to information, finding out who we are, finding out our origins, all the birth information certificates, such a big issue. I thought it'd be a great opportunity to do something slightly different and kind of showcase what they're doing in Ireland, because they're trying to, not trying. You are moving with the times. You're opening up. So, we had a guest on the show from Cork, a South African lady from who now lives in Cork. Recorded an episode with her a couple of weeks ago, so that'll have gone live by this one time. This gone live, but this is going to be a different sort of episode. So, what? Yes, can you start off? What's the new service that you?
Okay, so I suppose I'd start off by saying, Simon, it's actually new legislation that was introduced in Ireland on the 1st of July 2022. And the piece of legislation is called the Birth Information and Tracing Act. So that, for the first time in Ireland, enshrines in law adoptees' rights to apply for and receive all information held about their birth, their early life, their care, medical information, while they were, at their time of birth and up to their time of placement. So I'll just give you some context. It's historic and it is landmark, because for many, many years, and understandably for the last 20, 30, 40 years, adoptees have been asking for this. And effectively, they were blocked or barred from receiving information about themselves. So adoption was legalized in Ireland in 1953, the 1st of January. And since then, there's been approximately 50,000 people adopted in Ireland. Now, I'll talk later on about some of the complications and challenges around that. But prior to 1953, there was quasi-informal adoption. Some people call it fostering. Some people in Ireland, the term boarded out was used. So it was quite a difficult placement of children, sometimes very successful, but sometimes for a lot of people not so happy or successful, where effectively children were placed with families and used as unpaid labor, maybe on farms or in households. And I suppose for your listeners, the challenge is finding those records if they exist, and then putting them together to give them to the adoptees. And I would say that, there's sometimes with adoption, there's a misnomer that there's a file for each individual. We're just going to lift out Patricia's file or Simon's file or Mary's file and everything is there. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Some of your listeners will know that many people in Ireland were born in mother and baby homes, as they were called, which were not great places for the vast majority of people. Women would have said they were effectively incarcerated there. So the pathway for records was, when a woman went into a mother and baby home, there was a record of her admission, so to speak, and her time there. And then there was maybe some records of the birth of the child. But unfortunately, then some women may have moved to another institution, either a Magdalen Laundry, another mother and baby home, and the child may have moved to another institution or care facility. So we're already at having two sets of records. And then we move on another step where maybe the birth mother, the mother was involved with an adoption agency. So we've got a third set of records. And then we've the records related to the prospective adopters. And then finally, the records related to the placement of the child. So I often say to people, we're trying to put together a jigsaw of records, in some instances over 30, 40 or 50 years. And that takes time. And we want to get it right, because people have been waiting a long time, and the last thing we want to do in the Adoption Authority is give out incomplete records or the wrong records. So it's taken a lot longer than we would have liked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that that term "boarded out" on the website, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that means. I've not heard that term, but so thank you for explaining that and a bit of context. Yeah, when I did my search over here in the UK, you know, so here you've got to go through a consultant, like a counsellor, and they have access to the records. I eventually found out they got my file, pulled it together eventually, yeah, my birth. So I was adopted from Liverpool, which is for people perhaps outside of the UK and Ireland. It's like, how far is it from Liverpool to Dunleary's the port, isn't it?
The port, yeah, probably what a couple of hours by boat.
Hours, yeah. So there's a lot of people from Ireland in Liverpool and Liverpool in Ireland. Yeah. So my birth father has an Irish name, actually. Had an Irish surname, Quinn. So yeah, there's a little bit of connection there. So the legislation really is the background to the change. And this is enshrined in law, and that's the basis on which you're building this support service and access service for adoptees.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like there's two agencies in the state providing information. Again, I suppose this adds to the confusion. So our Child and Family Agency, which are the Child Protection Agency in Ireland, they would hold adoption files, and then obviously the Adoption Authority holds files. So the legislation does a couple of things. As I said, gives everyone the right to all of their birth, early life information, and very critically, including their original birth certificate. So up to the 1st of July, the vast majority of adoptees could not get their birth certificate unless their family of origin sanctioned that, or it was clear that their family of origin birth mother was deceased, and they would issue that. But it was only in a small number of instances. The legislation also gives a legal basis for tracing. So as you were saying there, in the UK, you go through a consultant or person. So in Ireland, people can trace, they can make an application, say, I want to trace my family of origin, I want to trace my birth parents, my siblings, half siblings. So then people are entitled to a service. So people have to make two applications, which is slightly complicated. They have to make an application for their information, and then they can make an application for tracing. We've had over nearly 3,000 applications for information. And I think over that, the Child and Family Agency are receiving the applications for tracing. They've had well over 3,000 applications for tracing. And they're from people all over the world. So really interestingly, part of the campaign that the Adoption Authority ran was a communications campaign, not just in Ireland, but worldwide, through the Government of Ireland Embassy Network, and very heavily promoted in the UK, because we want birth parents and adoptees who moved away, who live in the UK, Canada, America. And I've done some interviews with some, USA-based media agencies just to get the word out, because this isn't just a service for people residing in Ireland. It's a service for any person who their life was affected by adoption, be they extended family of origin, or adoptees themselves. So we really want those people to engage. And what we've done to try and make it as easy as possible, Simon, is there's like a specific website that has all the information. So it's called birthinfo.ie, fairly simple, birthinfo.ie. Go on the website, how to trace, how to apply for information. It has a frequently asked questions. And obviously then there's some phone numbers there. If people are, people might say, look, I don't understand this, or, requirement for identification. So we're really keen to help people apply in the way that suits them. We're very conscious of digital literacy, and not everyone has Wi-Fi or access to devices. So again, they can make a phone call, or we can print a hard copy. Like, we have actually a lot of people who say, look, I'm not filling this in on a computer. So we'll send them out the actual physical form and they can fill that in. We were very fortunate as well that, given that in Ireland, probably every family, there's just over 5 million people living in Ireland, every family in some way is touched by adoption. Our government agreed at significant cost that every household in Ireland would receive a booklet of information about this new legislation. So I don't know in the UK, but very rare that we send information to every household. I think obviously for elections and referenda, and obviously during COVID, but this was a unique, it was deemed as so important that we got the information to each individual, that we distributed over 1 million of these booklets to houses and people who don't live in homes, people in prisons, people in homeless accommodation, that everyone would have access to it.
Wow. I'm just thinking of the postage bill. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, we had to, like, we balanced the cost, because obviously it's taxpayers' money, with the historical nature of the legislation. And again, I suppose for your listeners, going back, it was 1984 in Ireland was the first time that legislation about adoptees' rights to their information was first drafted. So we're talking like, nearly 40 years ago. And that's why I think the government took the decision that people have waited so long for this. We want it to be successful. We want as many people as possible to engage with the impact and their rights of access to information. So that's why we took the decision to give a booklet to every household in Ireland.
That's great. And I forgot to say when you mentioned the URL. So in the show notes, listeners, as always, right, there'll be links. There'll be links to birthinfo.ie. There'll be links to the Adoption Authority of Ireland, so people can, if they're like, I'm always, I listen to podcasts when I'm walking the dog or driving. So people do me give me a website address. I can't always remember it, and I'm not going to try and write it down while I'm driving, or I've got a pen when I'm walking the dog. So check that out if you want to find out more. But that's great. If you had 3,000 people take up this, and this was since October, did you say?
So we opened the services in 2 phases. So the first thing was that we launched what we called a contact preference register. So this was to allow people to indicate the level or type of contact they wanted to have. So birth parents could say, look, I really want to share information with my adopted son or daughter, but I don't feel ready to meet at the moment. Or I want to share a letter, but not phone calls. So this contact preference register also allowed quite a small number of people. It's very important to say, I think we've only had about 150 people say, look, I don't want any contact and I really don't want to engage with this. And it was important to allow those people to register what we called no contact. What that didn't mean was that their adopted son or daughter wouldn't receive information, but that we would tell their son or daughter, look, we're giving you your information, but we need to advise you that your family of origin have said no contact. Again, I suppose interesting with no contact over the years, because we've had this register running. It started in 2005, and then with the legislation. So we have about 17,000 people on this register going back to 2005. People who said no contact maybe 10 years ago come back to us and say, look, I've actually thought about it and I did say no contact, but now I'm really keen to meet, or I'm really keen to have some sort of communication. So I always say to people, no contact means no contact now, but it doesn't close the door into the future, because we all know our lives change, things can happen. We read something, we see something, we talk to someone, and we reconsider what we might want. And again, I suppose your listeners will be aware, in Ireland, there's a Catholic legacy, there's a legacy of maybe secrecy around at the time what would have been called unfairly unwanted pregnancies. So again, that was the reason for the booklet, to give information and say, look, these are your rights. So the register opened in July. And that was to allow people who wish to register no contact. And as I say, with about 150 of those registering no contact. And then on the 1st of October, we launched our information and tracing services. So it was really to spend 3 months and really getting the information out there. So it was like a 3-month campaign to say, this is what's going to happen in October. Here's information about it. If you have any questions, come to us. And then on the 1st of October, we launched our applications with the Child and Family Agency for information services and tracing services. And between both services, I think we've about 6,000 applications, which we didn't think we'd get that many. That is great, but it also has a challenge built in because you know, it takes a long time to put together that information, and we want to do it forensically, and we want to do it really well, particularly for people who've been waiting a long time.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Fantastic, as you say, the accuracy is really important here. So yeah, and I did my search in 2 phases, right? So I got what somebody called an original birth certificate, but it's not. It's just a bit of crappy paper, really, with her name on, and my original name on. That was a bit of a spooky one. I didn't realize that I'd had a name other than Simon Jonathan Ben, right? So that's who you're talking to, but I was David Anthony Flower, from my birth month. So yeah, I paused, and then something happened. I had a bit of a meltdown in a therapy session and decided, right, okay, I'm not going to let this fear blight my life, and I restarted the search, and that led me to getting the file. So yeah, it's quite important that people go at their own speed and have and go in phases and can change their mind.
Exactly. And I think that, again, there can be a bit of a misconception that adoptees want everything. They want obviously most adoptees want their information, and they immediately want to meet all their family of origin. And I think that's probably a little bit attributed to these, long lost family sort of programs on TV that are very, okay, they're good, but they're giving a limited overview. Because in my experience, and I've been CEO for nearly 9 years, the vast majority of adoptees want information. And then they might decide, okay, that's fine. I now know where I was born, who looked after me, my birth name, as you say, some medical information, but that's enough because I have my family. And then other people say, maybe after a while, as you say, I want to do a trace. So it isn't just a one size fits all, that everyone wants all of the services. And that's why we deliberately separated the provision of information with the provision of tracing as 2 distinct services.
Yeah. Have you heard this phrase, reunion porn? Have you heard that?
Well, I mean, I've heard the phrase related to lots of programs, like, the poverty porn, where they had, like, unfortunately in the UK, it was like England's poorest street, or, you probably experience this, but we often get calls from journalists or television production companies saying, so we want to follow someone on their journey and their trace, and can you put us in touch with the birth mother or an adoptee? It's like, no, we don't do that. No. Like, this is someone's this is someone's private life, and it's also very sensitive and confidential to them. So I have mixed views in terms of the whole reunion porn, as you describe it. I think some people may wish to do that, and they have done so. I'm not so sure that's how things should be, because I think a lot of us in the adoption community know that probably the journey to reunion or meeting family of origin isn't just a linear, straightforward, you meet them and suddenly you're part of another family. It's a slow burner.
Yeah. So what sort of provisions are there in Ireland for the kind of like the support along the journey? What does that look like?
So again, I'll give you all the details to put on the podcast. So we have the first thing I would say is we're not assuming that everyone who comes to us for services needs therapeutic or support. And that's something that we've heard quite strongly, and we've listened to that some people are like, yeah, I just want my information. And to be quite honest, I don't need to meet a social worker, or I don't need a whole. So some people do, some people want to check in. So we've a full social work service here through the Adoption Authority, as does TUSLA, the Child and Family Agency. We're sending people their information in the form they want, either digitally or hard copy. And we're, I suppose, offering, if you've questions, come back to us. And then we also have a counselling service that's run through Bernardo's. I know you have Bernardo's in the UK. We have Bernardo's in Ireland providing post-adoption support services. There hasn't been a massive take-up of people wanting significant therapeutic interventions. What I would say is our social workers are maybe having, a couple of conversations with people where they say, oh, previously I thought this was my life story, and now I find out that this is. So I just want to tease it out with you. So we're very careful to go at the pace that the adoptee wishes, and not to assume you're going to be traumatized, you're going to be, because some of that narrative did build up in Ireland that all these adoptees were going to be traumatized and upset and angry, whereas the vast majority are quite practical, and it's like, thank you, I now have received the information. But between ourselves in the Adoption Authority, the Child and Family Agency, and in Bernardo's, there's support there if people wish to have counselling or some brief intervention from a social worker. Or, in fairness, Simon, a lot of people come back to us and say, look, I got my information and there's a couple of things on the file that I'm not clear about, and it may be an administrative question. It says here 1978, but I thought that happened in 1977. So some of it is technical questions that they have about the information they've received. And then, as I say, for a small number of people, they may have concerns, or they may have some upset arising from receiving the file and the information.
We I was just keying away there, a bit rude, but we've had one of your colleagues from Bernardo's Island on the podcast, actually, and it was a long time ago now. I can't remember her name. That's really,
was it Suzanne? Was it Suzanne Connolly?
It was.
Yeah, she's the chief executive there. She's super.
Yeah. So I'm going to put a link in. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Suzanne's episode that we did last year. It's I'm 55 and my brain, and it has very limited short-term capacity. I can't remember. It's probably about 150 episodes ago since we did that. Yeah. Wow. So is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, I suppose, like one of the challenges I hit on earlier, Simon, and it is, look, it's regrettable. It's regrettable and positive. We way more applications than we have the current resources to process. And I think I said earlier as well that we're being really cautious and careful that we send every individual all of their information. So it's taking time. There were some statutory timelines set down in the legislation that we're not going to be able to hit on with 3,000 plus applications, but we're working through them. We're committed to them, and we're updating people along the way. So if you've made an application to us and you're thinking, right, I should get this by November, December, and we know you're not going to get it, we're going to let you know. We're not just going to let it drift. So that's important for people. I would also say, unusually, my background is in the charitable world. So it's, working in the state sector is different. But I would say, in terms of the Adoption Authority staff, people are hugely committed to this legislation and the services arising from it. And actually, we've done a lot of work with the staff. I think a lot of the staff feel quite privileged that they are giving someone for the first time the person's entitlement, their right. And I think they take that very seriously, and they're very aware of the significance of the provision of information for people. So it's not like sending out a tax cert or another government document that may be important but not as emotionally or life significant. So the staff, I always say, we're really fortunate to have such a committed dedicated group of staff. Like staff were coming to me over, saying, look, I'm happy to work overtime, I'll work longer, work harder, because they know how important it is to get this information out there to adoptees.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I think that expectations thing's really important. I just got a new passport through, and they said 12 weeks, and it came in about 2 weeks. So I'm absolutely I'm delighted at it. But the expectations is kind of really important.
Yeah.
And patience. Like when I got my adoption file, whenever it was, 7-8 years ago now, the paper smelled like Egyptian papyrus. You know what I mean? Like it being locked away in some box somewhere for ages, and you've clearly got quite a job on your hands, finding those boxes and pulling the information together from different sources. So I think as long as we manage expectations, everybody's happy. It's that lack of information with the bureaucracy that drives me nuts. As long as I'm kept updated,
I think people appreciate. They mightn't like it, but they appreciate it being updated. As you say with your passport, you thought you get it in 12 weeks, you got it in 2. You're delighted. We want to tell people, look, we are delayed and we're working on it, and you will get it, but it's going to take longer. And one of the reasons it's taken longer is we didn't anticipate that when people received their file, the number of back and forth questions they have. Now, that's not a criticism, and we're happy to take them. But if you receive your file and you come back to me 6 times with an email, and I respond 6 times, that's taken a chunk away from the, so there's a kind of a domino effect. But we are absolutely committed to providing top class information services to everyone who seeks them.
Yeah. And just to be clear again, Patricia mentioned this is available to, it doesn't matter if you were born in Ireland, it doesn't matter where you live now, this service is for everybody, because like, as I mentioned to Patricia before started the recording, like 60% of the listeners here to the Thriving Adoptees podcast are from the US. So is there, I mean, we focused in on the adoptee thing. Is there anything else that you want to mention about birth mothers apart from the register?
Yeah. So, I mean, I suppose, what your question there about, I suppose, support and guidance and therapeutic support, like that's probably one of the areas where some birth mothers are a little bit maybe, this is a big thing. I didn't realize that, the information would be going out to my adopted son or daughter, and they might just need a little bit of a conversation or a chat about it. And that's there for them. So it's not just about the adult adoptees. It's about siblings, half siblings, everyone and anyone associated. And, for your USA listeners, like there were over 2,000 children born in Ireland, sent to the United States, and then adopted in the USA. And that's something very significant. And we're also, any information that we have on those files and records, we can get them to those individuals. Also, I suppose people who, have moved abroad, anyone who, I suppose, has a link to Ireland and adoption, we're happy to help them. Now, a couple of people have come to us and said, oh, I think I was adopted in Ireland, or I think I was adopted from Ireland. In a small number of instances, we're saying to people, we have no records. Like, we've done every search and every type of search. So there are some people where, unfortunately, for vast, lots of reasons, we don't hold records.
Okay, that's great. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate
Thank you very much. And I'll give you all those headline, those website links and any information that might be useful to your listeners.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.